We're in the Peak District, the undoubted peak of all districts, the pinnacle, if you will, the absolute zenith of districts. And it was here 359 years ago that one village is said to have sacrificed itself to save countless more lives. When plague came to the village of Eyam in 1665, it's said that the residents sealed the village off, keeping themselves in and saving countless lives. It's a tale of noble sacrifice, of strong Christian values and of tragic romance. Don't film the feet. I'm wearing shorts. I'm not meant to reveal that.
It's a hot day.
Yeah, I know, but I'm self-conscious wearing shorts with a waistcoat. In fact, during the coronavirus pandemic, Eyam was often held up as one of the first successful examples of social distancing and the selfless actions of the villagers, an example for us all to aspire to. It's not difficult to find newspaper or website articles about the Eyam martyrs and all that they gave up to save others, their selfless sacrifice, an example to us all. Except if you dig a little deeper, you find another story, one which suggests that the story of Eyam, the historic plague village, the village of the damned, is nothing more than a village of damned liars.
I have seen so many feathers over the last couple of days.
Probably a quill.
Yeah, they'll make a cool quill. No! No, Paul! You don't know where it's been.
Bird.
Well, what have we here?
Good joke, Sanja. Mompesson.
What does that mean?
That's the name of the well, Mompesson's well. I'll tell you who Mompesson is because he's an important part of this story, this tissue of lies that we're unravelling.
Oh, nice.
The Great Plague arrived on British shores in late 1664 via dirty rats and fleas who arrived on ships at London's docks. The following summer, August 1665, Eyam-based tailor George Vickers took receipt of a box of fabric which had been sent to him from London, and upon opening the box he discovered that the fabric was damp, so he took it out and he hung it next to the fire, and within a few days he got sick and died. Within a month, all but one member of his family was dead, and the plague soon started to spread throughout the village, causing panic. In late 1665, the local rector William Mompesson and his predecessor Thomas Stanley implored the villagers to quarantine themselves to prevent the spread of the disease to neighbouring villages. And of course, being good, selfless Christians, they all obliged. So the inhabitants set up boundary markers, boundary stones they were called, all around the village, which mark the limits of the quarantine area. And they would leave money at these stones in exchange for food from their neighbours, basically. And we're here at what's now known as Mompesson's well, which was one of the boundary stones. And the well here, they filled it with vinegar because they believed that would sterilise the coins that were dropped in it. So people would come from other villages and fish out from the vinegar. I mean, it stinks. I mean, when you use vinegar to clean the kitchen, I hate it. I mean, I think I'd rather get bubonic plague, frankly, than have vinegar hands. Also, you told me to stand by this wall. When I was a child, my nan always called these types of walls snake houses because she said they were the type of walls that snakes live in. Do you think a snake might get me? Don't just walk away. Can I move away from the snake house, please? Can I move away from the snake house? Fine, just walk away. Fine, don't answer me. I'm not going to stand there anymore. I'm scared of an adder getting me. Well, I hope you fall over as you're walking backwards. Oh yeah, haha, you nearly did then, didn't you? Can we look at this well, this stinking well? Got anything to say?
I mean, I wouldn't drink from it, it's all mucky.
Well, you don't drink from it, you fish coins out from it.
I wouldn't bottle my vinegar from there. Maybe they put the leaves in because it's like meant to be like salad.
There's some coins in there now.
Oh cool, go and get them.
I can only see it's about 5 1-pence pieces.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, I'm so hard up, I'm bloody tempted.
Go on then.
It's all rusty shut. If I had that grabber, we've got that grabber at home for when I'm feeling lazy.
It broke.
The grabber broke?
Yeah, I was using it to pick up some garden debris, and I snapped one of the grabbing fingers.
Right, so not only can I not steal these coins that are in the stink well, but also now we've got to buy a new grabber for when I'm feeling lazy.
Yeah. So this would have been the cleanest well in all of the Peak District with all that vinegar.
I'm not convinced that you...
I mean, you can't stand the smell of vinegar. I
like it on chips, not on my kitchen.
Just for the record, I only use vinegar to clean about once every few months, and that's when I like cleaning out the microwave, because if you put vinegar and water in a cup and put it in the microwave, you can also use...
It stinks.
You can also use lemon. It's really good.
Use lemon. Lemon's a nicer smell than having my house stink of...
lemon.
It permeates the entire house.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love it.
It's like...
But I do love vinegar. Oh, I love vinegar.
On chip? What do you mean? You just love...
Yeah, I do.
I like it on chips, that's it.
Drinking apple cider vinegar is meant to be good for you. Oh, sheep. Hi. Oh, he said hello. Oh, sheep.
Yeah, check out the sheep, everyone.
Sheep said hello.
Can you see the sheep in the distance there?
She literally looked over at us and said hello.
Okay,
Right,
are they sheep?
Yes.
I thought they were cows. Why are they covered
It's a goat.
Why
It's a goat.
Why are they cow colours? Why are they cow colours? I thought they were cows.
Look at the size of them.
I thought they were far away.
Look at the... Are you for real?
I thought they were cows. Okay, I was focused on what I was saying, not upon the local...
Oh my God, there's a stone circle. There's a stone circle.
Where?
There.
Oh yeah, there is.
Shall we go and walk around it and
Well,
get some
we
good
can't.
luck?
We can't. There's no way in there. Look, there's a fence and shit.
Oh no, there's a stone circle.
Anyway, we've got other stuff to see.
Okay, we've got other stuff to see. Wish us luck.
Over the course of Eyam's epidemic, over 260 of its 340 or so residents died, including Catherine, the wife of Reverend Mompesson, that is his real name. The Eyam plague finally subsided in late 1666 after 16 months of almost unimaginable tragedy, with the last recorded death occurring in October of that year. There's no question that the Black Death tore through Eyam as it had so many other towns and villages. Today, Eyam's brush with the plague is remembered via the town museum, plaques on buildings. There's a memorial service that's held on the last Sunday in August every year. But to really understand how Eyam became known as the plague village, we have to jump forward in time 150 years. To the 19th century.
So check this out. Something hills in the village slide away in the snow.
You know that saying?
Play through ages, cut stick outside, I mean. Silk stockings rolled up and
I don't need to read it all. Don't need to read it all.
Visitors of the flood events.
Don't need to read all that, I think.
Watching the planes in the searchlights from Story.
Okay, yeah, we get the idea. There's some stuff. So you know that old saying?
Yeah.
It's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven.
Yeah.
This needle,
Yes.
that would be slightly easier for a camel to get through, don't you think? This needle here, the eye. Slightly easier.
How big is the camel?
My point is that would be slightly easier.
Is the camel like a cat that can squish its head
No,
down?
it's a camel.
Really
It's
flat.
camel size. What I'm saying is that needle, it would be slightly easier for the camel to get through it.
Maybe it could fit.
I mean, it wouldn't.
It could fit a whisker and eyelash through.
You could probably push a camel fetus through.
Paul, no, no. I think if the camel can squash itself really flat like cats can, have you ever seen like videos of cats squishing themselves under doors and stuff?
Don't think camels can do that.
Wow, you look like a pancake.
Likewise, if a camel falls off a building, I don't think it lands on all fours. Like, boom. Film that. So this window tells the story of the Eyam plague. So if you see here on the left, starts with the cloth arriving from London and the death of the tailor above it. And over here you've got Stanley and Mompesson going, what should we do? What should we do? Everyone's dying. Everyone's dying. What should we do? Then down here, this is Mompesson preaching to his parish because basically they closed the church, classic social distancing, and they held services outside in an area nearby called Cucklet Delph, not Dilf, which I am. Cucklet Delph, not Cuck either. Hope. At the top there you've got Mompesson's well, and you've also got the Riley graves. If I'm right, the Riley graves, it was the only member of the Riley family to survive was, I think, the mother and wife, who had to basically bring all her family. She had to drag them out of the house and down a hill and buried them all together, like her children and husband. There's more to this story. This is the official version of events. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my goodness, the bell's tolling.
Those are the bell ends, because they're the end of the bells. It's like you pull them.
But no one was pulling it.
The bell ends.
No one was pulling them.
Well, it was a ghost. Got a guest book here.
Yes.
So get a look at this. So you've got all the comments. You've got like what people think. Very interesting and moving. Mm. Beautiful church. Beautiful church. The story is life affirming. Beautiful, wonderful, super. Charles and Cass. And then there's this as well, look. There's another one, look. Three ladies chatting non-stop in front of the window. Really? There were three ladies chatting non-stop in front of the window. Really?
I don't know why you want to record. I'm scared to talk in a church.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I want. What do you mean you're scared to talk in a church? The whole thing is you come here to talk to God.
Which is in your head. You don't talk out loud.
God's in your head?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's in imaginary.
You don't talk out loud. Imagination is real.
Imagination is real.
Have you ever heard of the placebo effect?
The
placebo effect is very real and creates real.
What? What are you talking about?
Things.
You're saying God's a placebo effect? Well, I find it weird that we're whispering. Why are we whispering?
I don't know, this is horrible. Why do
Jesus Christ, stop. Every bloody shot that you've been in today, you've complained about the lighting.
I wonder why.
Every shot.
Okay.
What, are you scared that Vicar's going to run out and talk? Do you know what? I'm not even scared if he tells us to get out. I'm scared that he'll come and chat to us.
I'm scared of authority. I can't handle authority.
Vicar's authority?
Yes. Save it for out of the sacred side.
There's a fly in here.
Okay.
What if that fly's the devil?
Shh.
Because the church was closed due to the outbreak, very few of the plague dead were actually buried here in the graveyard. Most of them were either buried in a mass grave or on unconsecrated land near to where they died. In fact, the town's unofficial grave digger had actually survived the plague, and he didn't believe that he could catch it a second time. But unfortunately, his entire family died because he was stealing stuff off the bodies of plague victims, and they contracted the plague from the stuff that he nicked. So, you know. This is the tomb of Catherine Mompesson, the wife of Reverend Mompesson, who led the whole quarantine thing. So she got buried in there. Over here is a memorial to Thomas Stanley, who was, well, they call him a supporter. Fucking hell, that's a bit close. I'm a bit confused because there's no grave. So what? It's just like, looks like a gravestone.
A memorial stone.
We're just like resting up against the edge of the
Maybe they couldn't find his body.
Couldn't find it. Well, it dissolved because of
the plague. Plague acid.
Oh no, he died 1670, so 4 years after the plague. He didn't last long, did he? It says something in 1666 at Eyam, 259 persons of ripe age and 58 children died out of a population of 350 souls. Clearly this stone, and this is crucial to our story, this came later, this memorial, because it mentions on there Theophilus Sidney Ecalaz. I don't know who that is, but he was a clerk in Holy Orders in 1891. So this isn't dating back to plague times, and that's crucial. So about 100 years after the plague, a rich seam of lead was discovered near to Eyam. And over time it transformed to a really wealthy mining community. At one time there was something like 430 mines within a 3-mile radius. Some of them actually ran underneath the village. And when the lead started to run out, Eyam switched over to fluorspar, whatever it is. It's the stuff that basically is in fluoride. And it became known for that. But then that too ran out. It had a healthy boot and shoe manufacturing trade, but even that dried up over time. So the residents of Eyam needed a new industry to bring in money to the town. And the industry that the people of Eyam hit upon to restore their fortunes was tourism. And now tens of thousands of people visit Eyam each year. On a good day there can be up to a dozen coachloads of school kids arriving, all here to see the famous village that sacrificed itself, or did it? So in the 100 or so years after the plague, it was pretty much forgotten. Villagers didn't talk about it much, they didn't much commemorate it. In fact, another reason why there are very few gravestones in this church of plague victims is because a lot of the gravestones were dug up and used as building materials. Some of the houses around here, in fact, have the headstones as either flooring or as part of walls. I looked up newspaper cuttings and I could barely find any mention of Eyam and the plague together prior to about 1817, something like that. In fact, it was 1842 when Eyam suddenly became known as the plague village. In that year, a local tax inspector called William Wood wrote a history of Eyam in which there was a lengthy passage about the plague. Wood's story was all rather melodramatic. He wrote about a young woman called Emmett, who was trapped in the village when the quarantine was imposed, while her fiance Roland had to wait 18 months for news of whether she'd lived or died. And when the lockdown was lifted, of course, he received tragic news. Now this rather ignited interest in Eyam and Eyam's story about the plague, this romantic notion of the people who had sacrificed themselves inside their village, of love that was thwarted as a result of that sacrifice. But prior to that, you'd struggle to find any mention of Eyam's plague at all. A couple of decades later, in 1866, it was the bicentennial of the Eyam plague. And the rector at the time was a guy called Reverend John Green of this church here, who hit upon a notion to mark the bicentennial in a big way. He chose a date that was as close as possible to Catherine Mompesson's burial. He printed up copies of a book or pamphlet on the story of the plague and distributed it, and it generated huge interest in the village. And all of this was a ploy by the Reverend John Green to raise funds for the restoration of the church. It was a huge success in terms of raising money, and Eyam became a must-see destination for tourists and people with a grisly fascination for death. The Victorians were generally fascinated with death as a whole, but the Great Plague in particular, because obviously at the time they were dealing with cholera and, you know, high mortality and the like. There was a real wave of plague literature that really has continued to this day, and Eyam's story has continued to be built on subsequently by poets and authors. And in fact, there have been 3 poems, one of which was a 4-part epic, 9 novels, 5 plays, 3 operas, 3 musicals, 2 songs, several radio dramas, and a 1973 TV movie written about Eyam, all portraying this tragic story of selfless Christian martyrs. The tourism grew, so Eyam really embraced the story and ran with it. A box alleging to be the one that contained the flea-infested cloth from London suddenly turned up out the blue and became a tourist attraction in and of itself. In 1951, plaques were attached to so-called plague cottages. The local pub started promoting itself as being in the worst hit place in the village. And overall, Eyam became a kind of plague Disneyland for dark tourism.
What were the rides?
The Boobo Whirl. I don't know, the spinning plague doctor. I don't put me on the spot. I'm not good when I'm having to be spontaneously witty, especially not at this time. It's been a long day, hasn't it? The plague doctors of the Caribbean, will that do?
That's quite good.
That's not bad, is it? That's about as good as it's going to get, probably.
Yeah, the haunted, instead of the haunted mansion, the haunted church.
Yeah, that's not as good, Sanja.
We spend a lot of time in graveyards.
Way too much. I mean, I think
These
only
days.
grave diggers and perverts spend longer in graves than we do.
Why do perverts spend time in graveyards?
Just they sort of lurk behind graves.
To do what?
Look there, like
What do you-
this. Under scrutiny, Eyam's story starts to fall apart and is revealed as a mix of historical fact, unreliable memory, and fiction. You know, a lot of it was just adapted to accommodate the tourist trade, which the town had come to rely upon. And in fact, very little survives from 1666. With regard to Eyam's plague story, there's 3 letters from William Mompesson, a few graves scattered around the village in the parish register, but that's about it. Much of the rest of the history of Eyam's plague was passed down by the children of Reverends Mompesson and Stanley, mythologising the heroic nature of their father's actions. There are even broader patriotic efforts to hold up the sacrifice of Mompesson and Stanley, you know, as examples of how brave, noble and pious English clergy were compared to their continental Catholic brethren. In 1868, the Sheffield and Rotherham Independent wrote about the restoration work on the church, describing William Mompesson as a man of no ordinary piety and devotion, and pointing out that, oh, by the way, another £1,200 would really help to finish the job. The following year, the whole Evening News wrote about how Catherine Mompesson, a young, beautiful and delicate woman, had thrown herself at her husband's feet along with her 2 young children and begged him to let them leave. And according to the account written more than 200 years later, lest we forget, Reverend Mompesson refused due to his devotion and duty to his flock. Oh, and by the way, the church still needs a few more quid. There's no question that what the villagers of Eyam endured was historic and tragic, but some have called the scale of the tragedy into question. A paper published in the 1970s suggests that as many as 64% of the villagers' families escaped unscathed, and that the overall death toll was far lower than been reported. In addition, others have suggested that rather than self-imposed heroism, the villagers of Eyam were forced into isolation, that in common with other parishes, towns and villages in the area, constables from nearby Sheffield prevented them from leaving. That in effect, the villagers of Eyam had no choice but to stay.
Stone looks like our ceiling.
Oh God. No, it's more intact than our ceiling.
In memoriam, our ceiling.
Hey everyone, in our last video we put up like a joke fundraising thing for our ceiling. Wasn't actually a joke, we really could do with some money.
No, stop, you're not allowed to do that.
Why? Because that's grifting.
You're basically just...
We've got no money in our ceilings.
You're doing what you're saying the...
Fine, I've got the plague.
Church
I've got the plague, and the plague caused my ceiling to collapse.
You said the churchman from Eyam did in the 1800s.
Yeah, okay, I've got the plague. I've got bubonic plague, and my ceiling's collapsed because of it.
Speak it into existence. Cancel and delete, cancel and delete.
I don't think I'm actually going to get plague.
Okay, it still exists, you know.
Fine.
It still exists.
Fine, I'm not... Okay, all right, I've got...
superstitious, come on.
I've got... What's that thing I've got on my feet? Plantar fasciitis.
Fasciitis.
I've got that, and it caused my ceiling to collapse. Please give generously. Seriously, give PayPal us some money.
No, stop.
Okay, don't then.
You think that this whole town, the plague thing, wasn't real, it was just done for tourism?
No, it was real. The plague hit here, but it hit other villages as well. And the reality is that it didn't necessarily hit Eyam any worse than other places, but Eyam was given this kind of undue attention to pay for the church.
Was it, do you believe it really was the first town to quarantine?
Well, we know it wasn't, because the quarantine's been around. We learnt that, didn't we, in one of our other videos, everyone?
Dubrovnik.
Yeah, Dubrovnik in Croatia, where Sanja was born. Looking this up, right, I started off doing the same, I'd heard the story of Eyam, the plague village, the first lockdown, and I heard about it a lot during the pandemic, because they often used Eyam as an example of, oh look, this was the first lockdown in Britain and it worked, and we all need to aspire to them. Okay, that was what we were often told. And you go on the BBC website, it's like, how many articles have been written about Eyam by the BBC?
Eyam?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they all say the same thing, which is, the official version of events that's in the museum, that's in the guidebooks, always quoting, some bloke that works for the museum or some bloke that's a tourist guide in the town, telling the story of Mompesson's sacrifice and how the villagers selflessly all went, yes, we'll not leave the village, we'll all potentially die, but that's the right thing to do. And there's never any questioning of that. Now, I discovered a bunch of academic papers, one particularly that started it. I'll link to it in the description. Shut up.
The dog agrees.
Doing a bit. I don't know if you can hear it. And say, last time we were in a graveyard, a dog started going ape shit at me. And once you read it, it's like, and from that I linked to other stuff. Then I went onto newspapers.com and I started looking at newspapers, which they go back to the 1700s. There's no mention of the plague, barely any mention of Eyam and the plague prior to Victorian times.
But was there mention of other places in the plague? Because why would they be talking about the plague in the 1700s?
Well, why would they suddenly start talking about Eyam 150 years later?
Good point. Good point.
We know why, because the guy needed to fix the church. The village its industries were crumbling and collapsing in on themselves. It needed money. And, you actually look it up. The first thing that's mentioned on the official website of the village is the plague. It is Eyam Historic Plague Village. And this town relies on tourism. I feel a bit shit saying this. It's a perfectly beautiful
It's really
town.
gorgeous.
And here I am taking a big shit on its number one.
Come and visit it. It is gorgeous.
But there's, the main reason that people come here is because it's the plague village. I mean, this is another thing. I found out that even the Great Plague in London, some people have questioned how severe that was.
Have they?
Because the first real account of that was written about 60 years after it happened, the arse end of living memory.
Right.
And back then they didn't have the records they have today. But as I was saying, so, you rely on the BBC, you rely on all these sources that are out there. You go on YouTube, there are loads of videos about Eyam, and I thought we were just going to make another one until I discovered, holy shit, it's actually, quite possible that this heroic sacrifice was nothing of the sort. That it was imposed upon them, that Mompesson, in classic authority figure style, didn't exactly follow his own rules.
No, history repeating itself.
Yeah, it just, and so, I don't know, history repeating itself. And it just, since making these videos and digging a bit deeper than perhaps other videos do on YouTube, which makes us a much better channel than all other channels. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It has made me kind of lose faith, for doing my own research.
But I guess the answer is just, look at who's being quoted. If it's someone who works for... in their interest. Yeah. That's basically what you're saying.
It's like you don't go to someone who works for BP or Shell for reviews of talk about what we need to be doing to prevent climate change. Or why could you tell us why we should stop using oil or fossil fuels? You don't go to that guy. He's got a vested interest, same as even on a small scale, a village like this. And I feel shit saying all this because this is a lovely village. They've made a virtue of the fact that they've got something special about it. It's not just another village. And I feel bad, but at the same time, don't lie to us. There's even evidence that some of the wealthier villagers fled at the start of the outbreak and set up homes a safe distance away. Even the pious and great Reverend Mompesson sent his kids away to Yorkshire for safety while he waited it out with his wife, apart from that one time that he left to go and drive to Barnard Castle to test his eyesight. So when you look at all the evidence, the story of Eyam, rather than being one of a kind of collective self-sacrifice, is actually much murkier and more human. It's not some unobtainable selflessness that we should all aspire to, but in fact it's just a story of people being people. So what does that all tell us? Well, it tells us that the Eyam plague is cobbled together like most historical narratives from both fact and fiction, and we've all kind of collectively accepted it as the truth. While the courage and sacrifice of the villagers, it can't be wholly dismissed, the subsequent exaggeration and romanticisation of the story paints a more complex picture. The interplay between historical fact, folk memory and the needs of a community have all contributed to the legend of Eyam, the plague village. And in the end, Eyam's story isn't about what happened, but how we choose to remember what happened, how we choose to interpret it. Is it about our need for heroes, be they selfless reverends or NHS nurses? Is it about how we'll accept anything at face value if it's presented with a degree of confidence and authority? Is it about how some will monetize their own suffering and tragedy? Or is it about something COVID-19, pandemic, blah, blah, vague shape of a conclusion, blah, you be the judge?
What do you think it's about?
Bunch of liars.
Aromatic herbs in use at the time of the plague in Eyam. So we've got rosemary, great with potatoes, and also used to disinfect and freshen the sick room. Balm, soothe has a soothing effect on nervous conditions and healing wounds. I'll take some of that when I'm feeling anxious, which is all the time. Thyme, which has a sedative and antiseptic qualities, and it helps coughs and digestion. And rue, I've never heard of rue, which is carried in...
Which is that strange, given you're an Australian. You got loads of them over there.
Do we?
Yeah.
Carried...
They're the things that look like big rabbits that bounce and...
Oh.